Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Parent Survival Kit podcast, From Surviving to Thriving in Your Household. My name is Gene Schwalen, and next to me, as always, is my beautiful bride, Dr. Sonia Schwalen, pediatric expert psychologist, nationally certified school psychologist. And today we've got a really great episode. I love going through this type of things. It's kind of really up my alley as far as things that I teach and whatnot and mentor. We're going to talk about secrets to time management, okay? So one thing, what's one thing that almost everyone wishes they had more of?
I don't know. What is it?
As a good friend of mine used to say, green stacks. Money. No, we're not talking about money today. We're talking about actually time. If we only had one more hour in the day, what would we do? You know, just one more hour. Where there are ways we can actually have that one more hour. So in past episodes, we've talked about self-care and how important that is for us as parents. With self-care, we can take care of ourselves better, which allows us to take care of our spouse and our children much more effectively. We've talked about just different dynamics and having family meals and all kinds of things that we've talked about that you have really given us a lot of good information on to really help us thrive in our household. So today, I want to talk about time management, how to create more time and be more efficient in our time to allow us to do more.
Okay. You know what? Hearing you speak about just now with green stacks, people want more money, people want more time. I was actually listening to another podcast a few weeks ago, and I'm not really even, I don't really remember who was being interviewed, but the person was talking about not dealing in the currency of money anymore, but dealing in the currency of time. And so really thinking about life in terms of time and how to prioritize and use it. And I think in our previous episode or a couple episodes ago, we talked about setting priorities and work-life balance not really being the way we should approach life, especially if we're trying to raise a family and hold down jobs and be productive, in our professional lives and in our family lives. But we need to really set it up so that we're thinking about prioritizing our time and thinking about how we deal in the currency of time.
Absolutely. And you had talked about it in that episode specifically about being more intentional. And then we've also talked about setting goals and New Year's resolutions. And one thing that I mentioned was minimizing and being a minimalist in effect. Instead of having all these new resolutions, we're trying to add to our plate, take away, take off our plate. Which can also create more time. If you think about it, time is our most valuable asset.
Okay.
And when we break down time, the first thing that I want to talk about is really understanding time and what it really means. So you can't buy more time. Something happens to your car, you've got insurance, you get replaced, you get it fixed, whatever it may happen. But with time, once it's gone, it's gone. And we have limited time, and we don't even know how much time ultimately we have to enjoy the people we love and everything else that we love doing. So time is going to be our greatest asset, always and forever. So what does that really mean? So what I like to do is break it down and look at the element of time. So looking at time as a currency, as an example, as you mentioned, there's 1,440 minutes in a day. And we could go a little bit further and say there's 86,400 seconds in a day, right? But you can't really do anything in a second. But when you talk about minutes, you can actually do things in a minute. If I want to, get more physically fit or have more energy, I can, in a minute, do 25 push-ups. At least I hope I can. We can do 50 crunches in a minute. There's things we can actually do in a minute. So that actually does make a lot of sense. The one thing that we have to also recognize when it comes to time and it being our most valuable asset, there's always time thieves out there taking our time, capitalizing our time. And so what are some of those time thieves that we have every day that we contend with?
Looking at your phone, trying to get some social media updates, checking email, right? I think that's a huge time thief.
Absolutely.
Things that just distract you from what you're trying to get accomplished, and really take away from how you're trying to spend your time. One thing I want to add to what you're saying about time is our greatest asset. Another way to think about time is everybody has time. Okay. We all have time. It just depends on what we're going to do with that time. Because I hear all the time, I just don't have any time, Dr. Schwalen, or I keep running out of time, or I don't have the time to do the things that I want to do. And I like to help, clients and parents reframe that as, well, hold on a second. Every day we all have 1,440 minutes, right? We all have that amount of time. So we need to think about how we prioritize that time and what we're going to do with it.
Absolutely.
So time thieves is one of those biggest things to become aware of is when you set out to go do something and you're very intentional, what is a barrier to actually following through with your plan? What's getting in the way?
Absolutely. So in this episode, I want us to talk about some different secrets, if you will, as far as how to manage time better, be more efficient and whatnot with our time, because we can ultimately do all the things that we want to do if we prioritize. And so there's some different tools that we can actually utilize to help us really kind of understand where our time is going and how to get that back.
And some of the tools you're going to talk about actually come from research and publications and things like that.
Absolutely. So I've used a lot of these secrets for many, many years just in my consulting business. I've used them as a coach. And also there's been some things that I've also picked up from different research and books and whatnot. One of them is a book called The 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management by Kevin Cruz. That's a really good book for people to really go out there and read because it breaks down a bunch of other areas that can be beneficial as well. But we're going to hit on just a few secrets that I've trained on quite a bit that I've pulled from different resources.
Okay, awesome. Let's do it.
All right. So now that we know that time is our most valuable asset, now we need to figure out how we can really utilize that time to do the things that we want to do. And when I teach this to different, and it's usually to employees, they always look at it as, because I always approach it, this is not just about your employment here. It's about putting this into effect in your everyday life and all the things that you do. So one thing that we can utilize is, one of the secrets is figuring out your most important task. So when it comes to your career, you can have a most important task each day, each week, each month, each quarter. And an example of that is, you want to do a podcast and educate people in different areas. So my most important task was to find a producer, Lee over here, that could actually facilitate doing a podcast for us, right? So that can mean different things. And we can have MITs also in our personal life. We want to take a family vacation. So my most important task for the next couple of weeks is to research some places, maybe particularly that we can actually go on and all enjoy and whatnot. So creating this most important task can be very beneficial and effective.
And that's even a daily thing, right? So my most important task when I wake up in the morning is to honestly take care of myself before the kids wake up, right? And then once they wake up, my most important task right in front of me is to get them fed and dressed. So it also plays out on like a very daily basis, a real life basis in the home too. Or in the evenings, the most important task is figuring out what to put on the table for dinner and making sure the kids get their bath and their bedtime routine and things like that.
Absolutely. And we can have most important tasks that can be, you can compartmentalize that all you want. And once you understand that there's MITs that you can create, we can really talk about some other things that will help lead to creating a schedule, ultimately, to prioritize your time. So one of the secrets is to ditch your to-do list. Okay. And this is actually explained very well in the book that I just mentioned by Kevin Cruz. But for years and years and years, I had my notebook that I have all my to-do items on, right? And then I would cross them off as I could get them done. Big, huge list. Never could get the list done in a day ever. And I carried it over day to day to day to day to day. And then what I learned is there's very few people that actually complete their to-do list. Why is that?
Time thieves.
Time thieves, absolutely.
Right? I think we're going to keep coming back to that theme.
Okay. So another big reason why we can't complete our to-do list is when we look at our to-do list, it's so overwhelming. If we have everything on there that we really want to do, need to do, and whatnot, it is way overwhelming. And one thing that we never do with our to-do list is we don't allocate how much time each of those tasks will take on our to-do list. And even if we did, how do we prioritize that and put it into action? So it's kind of like we pick and choose and we figure out what may be most important, urgent, and whatnot, and then other things just get left behind and ultimately never get done. So if you take your to-do list and you put it into a calendar system, we all have smartphones, one of our time thieves. So take that phone and utilize it to our advantage instead of a disadvantage, and use the calendar system we have in there, and then take all of our to-do items and put them into our calendar system. When we put things into our calendar system, what do we have to do?
Pick a start and end time.
Start and end time, right? So you have to allocate how much time you're going to actually utilize for that task. So each of these tasks on a to-do item list has to be allocated, has to have a time allocation to it. And so when you start doing that, you realize, well, I can't do all these in a day. Can never happen. You have to start putting it in different days. It's very beneficial in a lot of ways too, because if I can't get to something, if there's a time thief, get a call from the school, somebody, little Johnny, little Susie's sick. Got to run to school now. Well, I was supposed to be doing this at this time, but I can't now because I got to run to school to pick up little Johnny, little Susie. The great thing about having your to-do items in a calendar system is that you can simply
reschedule them
and move them to a different time or a different day. If I like to work out first thing in the morning and I have to catch a flight to go on a business trip for the day, then I can simply reschedule my workout from the morning to the evening when I get to the hotel, as an example. So there's all different types of things you can do rescheduling, which makes it very effective, very efficient.
So now what I'm going to add, just from the psychological perspective as well, really the neuropsychological perspective, is we know that the human brain is not really capable, first of all, of multitasking. That's not a real thing. It's just a funny phrase that we use in regular language. But when you actually look at different studies and how the brain works, we tend to be, we actually are very good at selectively attending to things. So we're going to be paying attention to just one thing at a time, okay? And so working on multiple things or multitasking, it's not a reality. People may feel like they're multitasking, right? Like I can be on a phone call and type an email or whatever, but the cognitive resources necessary to do those two things with like good quality and efficiency is completely drained when you're trying to attend to two things at one time. So it doesn't actually save anybody time. It actually takes much longer to accomplish things when they're trying to do more than one thing at a time, okay? So I want to say that because the other thing that we know about just the way our brains work is when it comes to attending to something, we usually do much better when we're trying to accomplish things in shorter blocks of time than stretching out long blocks of time. Are you going to talk about that here in a little bit? So when we do the calendaring, for example, the start and end times, if we're thinking, I have to write a report for work, or I have to run some, I have to get the materials for my kid's project, whatever it may be, you want to make sure that those time frames are actually shorter rather than longer, because you're a lot less likely to accomplish and make it to the end of that task if you're stretching that task out over too much time.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. In fact, there's actually a technique called the Pomodoro technique, which, you can have a longer block of time to get something done if it takes that much time. But getting up every, 25, 30 minutes and taking a 5-minute break to stretch, eat a snack, do whatever, just get up, walk away, and then come back. Research has shown that you are much more productive. And one thing that I just thought of when you were mentioning this, and I always go back to the day before vacation.
Yes.
Day before vacation, we have all these things to do in a short amount of time. And we find a way to get them done. So when we create shorter time blocks for things, we can get things done typically in a shorter time than we usually allocate if we're just focused. And that's really what some of these secrets that we're going to talk about today is really driven towards. It's not really anything more than trying to be more productive and have more energy. So energy and focus obviously is going to promote productivity.
Yeah, and I like that example of, acting as if it was the day before vacation, because if you really stop to think about it, you can accomplish, and most people do, they wrap everything up in a nice little bow and get things just so that they can leave town and not have to worry about anything. And then even when they get back, it's usually in perfect condition to come back to, and there's not as many headaches to deal with because they did all that work before they left. That's usually the case with a lot of people. And you've said it over and over again, let's act as if every single day is the day before vacation, because if we all worked like that all the time, we would be extremely focused and productive and just get so much more done with the time that we have every day. Now, that has a lot to do also with what research shows is when we have those shorter blocks of time to work and we know we're up against a timeline, okay, I only have 15 minutes to work on this before I have to get up and move on. You're much more likely to stay focused and try to finish what you're working on before you hit that time
Absolutely.
deadline.
Well, and it also goes back to energy and focus too. We can't focus on the same thing for more than a short period of time. It just doesn't work.
Right.
And that just gives us more time. When we can do that for our career during the workday, then we do have more time. We can be more efficient and have more time for our family in the evening, and even be more focused without the added stress of, did I get that done, or there's still some things that have to get done and whatnot. So definitely makes a big difference. One thing that I learned a long time ago, and I still struggle with this at times just because it's really hard to get over, but there's always going to be more to do no matter what. You can't get it all done in a day. Not everything can be done. There's always going to be more to do. It's not going to go anywhere. It'll be there tomorrow when you get back. So letting things be, getting as much as you possibly can, and then moving on with other things that are priorities in your life.
Right. And I think and having that separate boundary is so important, right? So if you are a working parent, when you're at work, you get your work done. When you're at home, you're focused on your family and what your home life needs, right? And keeping them so separate. If you're not a working parent, but maybe your kids do go to daycare or school during the day, when your children are not in the house, you completing the tasks that you need to get done as the homemaker or as the person who's running a business from their home or whatever else parents do, right, when they're not with their kids all the time. But getting those things done, because when the kids are home and the family is together, being able to maximize on that time together.
Absolutely. And one thing that we do a lot of times that contributes to those time thieves is really on our own accord, and that's procrastination. Just knowing you have to do this, but just not sitting down, making it a priority to get it done at that moment when you have that time allocated. We mentioned earlier time thieves. You mentioned email. Email is definitely a big time thief. Just like social media can be, Facebook, Instagram, whatever your platform is, TikTok these days. And there's research that shows that checking email, for example, actually is kind of like playing a slot machine. It's like you check your email over and over and over again, looking for a new email. And more times than not, there's not a new email. There's not a new post, or no one replied to your post, whatever it may be, whatever you're looking for. But you keep checking because every now and then there is something new there. And that dopamine is what keeps us coming back. So it's like playing that slot machine. We rarely hit the slots, but every now and then, woo, we got 3 cents. All right, we got $5. And then it keeps us continue to go back for more. And we have these huge casinos as a result. Same thing with email. So can you speak to that from a psychological standpoint?
Sure. I mean, that's just a basic behavioral principle. It's called the intermittent schedule of reinforcement. It's exactly what you mentioned. You sit there and you'll pull the slot over and over and over again, and you're sitting and playing for that one time that you're going to be reinforced. And it's so reinforcing because, like you said, the dopamine neurotransmitter is released, telling us like this is happiness.
Really
this is a
good.
good thing, and I want more of this, right? And so because of the intermittent schedule of reinforcement, we're more likely to continue to persevere rather than give up. So it's a setup for behavior that is very, very hard to eliminate.
Absolutely. I mean, you can sit there on social media and just check one thing, and all of a sudden, before you know it, 30 minutes has passed.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
And then usually after that 30 minutes, most people say they feel really yucky. They didn't get much out of it, and they can't believe they wasted that much time.
Yep. And then they're all depressed, and they don't want to do anything.
Right.
They want to go binge out in front of Netflix,
Right.
and it's kind of a trickle down effect.
Yeah. It's definitely a chain reaction.
So there's also something that is very, very important for us to have more time and to avoid these time thieves, and that is the power of saying no. In fact, Warren Buffett says it best. He says the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. And it makes perfect sense because there's always somebody asking for something or needing something. And, we want to help everyone we can, but we also have to have things that are prioritized in order for us to be effective and successful for our responsibilities, right? So saying no, what do you think about that?
I mean, it reminds me of, the star athlete who, maybe they're. I always think of runners because I have a running history. So I always think of, like the Olympic runner who's like the fastest person in the world, that kind of person, right? And we know who those people are. I mean, I've seen them. I've seen them race, and it's incredible. Um, they can run marathons in times that you would never even imagine because they are the fastest person in the world at the time. And the thing that got them there is that all they did was stay focused on their end goal, which was training, training, training. And anytime anything came to distract, hey, we got this trip that we're planning, you want to go, or we're going out tonight with some friends, or whatever, the answer is always no for those types of people. So the elite of the elite are the ones, the very successful people they're not going out there and um, messing up their self-discipline. They're out there focused on that end goal.
And it all comes down to figuring out exactly what's important for you and your priorities again. And there's nothing wrong with planning a trip or going out to dinner or going to have some drinks with friends or whatever it may be, but it's all prioritized. And we're going to get back to it here in a moment, but it's going to be all under our counter system in a certain way. In fact, I used to teach all my consultants across the country. The first day of training, I'd ask them, how many of you want to be a millionaire? Of course, every one of them would say yes. I think only one time out of hundreds of people I've trained, only one person ever said, no, I don't want to be a millionaire. I was like, well, okay, why not? But anyway, and what I would ask them is, let's just say that you had this inheritance that was given to you by an ancestor you've never met, they've never met you, and they gave you $1 million inheritance, but you cannot get that inheritance unless you accomplish one task, and it's climbing to the top of Mount Rainier, which is the highest peak in North America. And they're going to give you the mentors and training and everything you need, and you have 1 year to accomplish this. They don't know who you are, and they wanted to make sure that for you to receive this inheritance, that you were able to accomplish something. Very, very doable. I said, how many of you would actually do that? And everyone, of course, would raise their hand. Yeah, I'll do that. It doesn't matter where you're at physically or whatnot. If you have a year to train and you have the mentors and everything else you need, everyone could for the most part, probably accomplish that task. But it would take a lot of discipline and a lot of saying no. So again, where are your priorities at? Another secret that we want to talk about is really just taking immediate action on items that take less than a few minutes. One thing that we do a lot of times is we put things off, we procrastinate and whatnot. If you can do it within 5 minutes or less, take immediate action. It's done. You don't have to calendar it. You don't have to think about it, and it's out of your mind. I think one thing that really affects people a lot, and I know it did me a long time ago, is all of these things on my to-do list, just knowing they're in the back of my mind. And I think that's the mental stress that just really can take away from our energy and focus and wear us down.
No, I love that you said that. The mental stress piece is such a big part of reality, right? So, I mean, this is the thing that keeps people up at night. They're going through reflection on their day. They're thinking about all the things they didn't get to or all the things that they're going to have to do in the morning. So, I mean, literally people are losing sleep over this mental to-do list. They may not be feeling productive or effective, and then they start to feel guilty, or a sense of shame can even set in. And so that definitely contributes to mental health. And if we're not taking care of ourselves as parents, we're not really able to be effective as members of a full family, right? And so literally there is research that shows that if we put these things out on paper or in a calendar, right, because we're ditching the to-do list because we know that that's not really effective. But if we have certain times of day that we're supposed to be working on certain things, and we become okay with the fact that we're not going to get this whole to-do list done today, but it'll still be here tomorrow, and during these times I'll be able to work on that, then we are freeing space in our mind. We are literally freeing space in our mind and giving ourselves the mental room that we deserve to start thinking about things that are worth thinking about, things that we're grateful for, things that we can have an attitude of gratitude for, things that we want to accomplish for 2021 in terms of the role model we are for our children. So that mental space is so important.
Mentally decluttering.
Mentally decluttering. That's exactly
like
right.
It makes perfect sense. I just, because there's times, after a long day, you've done all these things, you're trying to accomplish all these tasks. And then, when you get home, you've got all these other things to do, and you just think about them, and it's really not a positive thing. I got to take little Johnny here. I got to run little Susie here. I've got to get dinner. I've got to do this. And there's bedtime. And little Johnny, he wants to read 3 books every night. And, that's a beating. And sometimes he wants to pick the biggest, fattest, thickest book there is so that we can, spend as much time awake as possible because we want to avoid bedtime. Because we know what happens at bedtime when the lights go out. There's a big, huge dragon underneath the bed, and he's waiting to come out, and the creativity these kids have, which is awesome, but that's because they have the mind space to be creative. But it's those things that we dread sometimes because we don't have the energy or focus because we have not really allocated our time in certain ways to maintain that focus and energy. Another thing that I think we do very effectively, and we do this together, and there are times that we get away from this and we can definitely see the repercussions from it. And then when we are doing this effectively is dedicating our first hour of each day to our morning routine. Mm-hmm. What does our morning routine look like? Go ahead.
So we like to start our mornings with God and the Bible. So we'll have a cup of coffee. We call it coffee with Jesus, right? And so we'll do our own separate Bible study. We're sitting next to each other, but we're doing that in the morning. And then usually after that, we will do some kind of physical movement, whether that be like a full-on workout in the home gym or some yoga or maybe go for a walk if it's nice out. But we'll do some type of physical movement and just get our body to wake up, right, and breathe fresh air. So we usually try to get outside if we can. And then from there, we jump into the rat race, right? So that's when it's like, okay, get ready. Now the kids are awake. After the wake up, it's all about them, and we're doing everything we can to just get out the door in time.
Yeah, and that first hour, dedicating it to really yourself is really important. There's really some keys to the morning routine. You mentioned we have coffee with Jesus, and we do that individually. And there's sometimes that we do it together, but usually it's individually because it gives us that's really so whether it's reading the Bible or meditation, just clearing your mind and letting everything else go is very, very important. And then, of course, the physical activity part is also very key to create more energy. I mean, ultimately. And if you think about it, if you went up to somebody who rolls out of bed, jumps into the shower, they have their morning routine, but it's not dedicated to being productive and really enhancing, certain aspects of their life. It's just going through the day-to-day.
Now, I also hear a lot of people will say, like, their morning routine, they will jump out of bed, and the first thing they do is they turn the news on or they start scrolling headlines, and that's not the quiet time. That's, like, research-driven and proven to have, like, the most healthy effects on our brain. That's just waking up. From the moment you wake up all the way to, like, when you go to bed is creating, like, all this stimulation. It's noise, right? And it's things that you're exposing your brain to from the very first moments of waking up in the morning, and it's actually not what's recommended.
Yeah, if you think about it also, one thing that I like to teach is if you think about yourself, yourself as a ball, and that ball has 4 chambers that you can inflate or deflate. Okay, inflate or deflate. One of them is going to be your mental health. One's going to be your physical health. One's going to be your spiritual health, and the other one's going to be your relational health. Okay, those 4 chambers, and those are pretty much the most important 4 chambers I think we'd all agree on. There may be subcategories, but those are the 4 main chambers. If you're pouring everything into, you can even just name one, like relationship, your career, or whatever else. If you're putting everything into one chamber, but you're not putting equally into all 4 chambers, your ball's going to be a little bit lopsided. So when you roll that ball down the floor, it's going to go off course, right? It's going to go off to the side. It's not, if you try to bounce the ball, it's going to bounce off somewhere else, and you can't. It's not going to be effective. And that's really how we are as individuals as well. We have to equally pour into all four chambers to be the very best we can possibly be for ourselves, for our jobs, and then more importantly for our families.
I agree, and learning how to let go in certain areas, and giving yourself permission to focus in on those other chambers is such a process for so many people. So like when I am working with parents and families, I mean, just wrapping your head around and accepting, like, there are areas in your life that you're probably really good at and excel at, and then there are areas that you might be neglecting, and just coming to terms with that, and like, okay, what am I going to do now about this? Those areas that I'm neglecting, I just need to give myself permission to say it's okay to not pour everything into just one chamber, but it's actually much better for all of us in our family if I start focusing on all of the chambers.
Absolutely. It's just, if you think about it, when I ask somebody, what would you think if you were able to get up in the morning, get up early, have some time to yourself just to meditate or do whatever you enjoy doing, read a book.
Drink your coffee while it's still hot.
Drink your coffee while it's still hot.
Not put it in the microwave like 8 times.
Have a quick morning workout, whether it's just a walk or a run or whatever it is. Doesn't matter where you're at in your life physically, but even just get up and just have a walk, hearing the birds chirp as the sun's coming up. And then after that, having a great, just wonderful, healthy breakfast. You got whatever it is you like to eat. You got some fresh fruit. You got this, you've got that. And sitting down to just a really great breakfast. Most people would say, yeah, man, that sounds like vacation. I'm in, that's what I look forward to in vacation. That's what you can have every day,
right.
And when it comes to the healthy breakfast, we do that too. And we do that by prepping, having everything prepped, for a week at a time. So we can just throw it all together.
Right.
But it takes a lot of diligence and dedication and changing current habits, which is really where the issue comes in. So what I want to talk about is back to the calendar system. It's called time blocking. And when we look at time blocking, this is really, really where the rubber meets the road. So what I've got here is I've got Dr. Schwalen's time blocked calendar system that we utilize in an Excel spreadsheet because it's easy to do and play around with. And everyone knows that I love Excel spreadsheets. So it's a running joke around everywhere. But it's easy to move things around and create really your different time blocks. So time blocking is important. So what we've done with her schedule, because she is so busy with work, direct care with clients, she's got trainings and mentoring and all this with different staff members and whatnot. Lots of meetings, being the head of a very big mental health outpatient clinic. There's so many things that she has to do in a day-to-day world. So,
and I'm also a mom. I mean, that's really important, right? Like, as a parent, I actually rely on time blocking my schedule during the day so that I can be as efficient as possible during the workday, so that when I am at home with my family, I don't even have to really think about work because I've handled work while I was at work.
Absolutely. And so we've time blocked not just the work things, but also the personal things. And that's something we do pretty effectively as a family as well. And when other people put this in place, they rave about it. And it takes some time. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it took forever for us to get her to really use these time blocks 100% effectively because it's completely different. But we have here at 5 a.m. to 5:30, we have Coffee with Jesus as an example. And then 5:30 to 6:30, get your workout on. And then get ready for the day, and then breakfast with the kids, off to work, blah, 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 blah. We have end-of-day planning. We have all the things that need to get done, time blocked to the very, very minute, which makes your day very efficient.
It does. It lets other people know where I'm going to be. It lets other people know that I'm available or unavailable. And being unavailable
Saying
is
no.
so important, right? Yes. Because I know that if I'm blocked at this time to get these things done, there's no other time that's blocked during the week for that task. I need to just focus on that, be unavailable, and then I will get to a meeting with whoever or answer that phone call or email when it's actually time for emails and phone calls, which is like something that's actually blocked on the calendar. And then, following something like this has really helped at home as well because the kids are on a schedule too. They have a routine, they know what to expect, and they rely on that consistency and structure. It is so evidence based and research driven that kids really like structure and knowing what to expect every
They
day.
thrive.
They really do thrive, and it sets them up for success as well. I mean, we have a 17-month-old who's not even really speaking more than a couple words at a time, right? Because she's just a young little baby still. But she understands that every evening after dinner, it's time for her bath. And we know that because she's doing the sign, bath, 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 and she's repeating it over and over again. She just knows what time it is.
Absolutely.
And so kids, even as young as that, come to rely on the consistency and the routine of life. We know that children's brains actually develop when their environment is safe. And safety comes from consistency and
Security.
predictability and that sense of security. And so, it may feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, right? But for your child, it makes a really big difference. It helps them understand what to expect in certain situations. And if you're responding the same way pretty much every time, they're going to come to rely on that. They can then develop a secure attachment with you as their caregiver, and they feel much safer. This is one of the reasons why kids do really well, for example, in school settings. So I talk to parents all the time, about, well, at school, they're fine. They're a perfect angel or the teacher has minimal complaints, but at home, it's very difficult to get a hold of them. It feels more out of control. I hear that a lot. And when we look at what's being implemented in the school environment, kids, junior high, high school even, they can start packing up their bags and moving on at the end of class, even before that bell rings, because they know exactly what's coming next at exactly what time. They almost have an internal clock where they can just like feel it. And they know exactly what's expected in each classroom because teachers have laid out the expectations and whatnot. And so when we do that for our kids at home, where they have that consistency and that predictability in their environment, they're much more free to be creative and use their imagination and just be free-spirited, happy little things running around.
Absolutely.
Versus stressed out or
Regardless of how
emotionally
old they
acting
are.
out. Right.
And the cool thing is, we've talked a lot about in the past episodes about screen time and whatnot. We have been able to utilize a time blocking system at home, utilizing also Dr. Schwalen's level system, where kids actually earn different levels and whatnot. Our kids at home earn different levels based on their behaviors, but we also have time blocks of when they can watch TV, when they can do this, and when they can do that, and so they also understand that too. So it's much more easily manageable with time blocks. Kids understand too. If they can understand it, they can do it.
Right, and this goes down as young as age, 2 and 3 years old. So for our 3-year-old, I created a schedule for him, and it's all in pictures. It's in like clip art pictures, right? So there's no words on it whatsoever, but it's just pictures of everything that he's going to be doing for the day. So there's a photo of like a baby waking up and then them getting, using the bathroom and getting their teeth brushed and then getting dressed. There's a picture of a kid at the table eating a meal. So that's for breakfast. So I can look at that and say, whenever he asks, like, can I do this or can I do that? I'll say, well, you just had breakfast. Let's look at your schedule. What are you supposed to be doing now? And he'll see a picture of, maybe using the potty. Oh, it's bathroom break time. So let's go do that first. And then you're able to have playtime, right? And so just using that as a visual, even as young as 2 and 3 years old, is very effective.
Absolutely. And we do it for our 8-year-old. And then even with our 17-year-old, if you time block, study time and these different things, if they procrastinate and they don't get it done, then they don't get the game time, the gaming time.
Get what's next, right?
Exactly, because they have to make up for it. So it makes a huge difference all the way around. Our 5 o'clock coffee with Jesus is actually changing now to 4 o'clock, believe it or not. And people are like, man, that's crazy. Well, we go to bed earlier because we have to get up earlier. And that's because our 3-year-old gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning now instead of 6. And there's no way of getting him back to bed because he is literally up.
Yes.
So we have to get up earlier. And that's the thing. It's discipline. The one thing that is really cool when you do these time blocks also, and I remember sitting down with Dr. Schwalen, and we've changed this numerous times. So we always, make changes and we implement different things, or things may change. Something may be more important today than it was, last month. But there's been times where she's like, there's no way everything's going to fit into my day. Impossible. And really, just getting really worrisome, about there's no way I can't do this. What am I going to do? And there is a way. There always is a way. And what you realize, if you take your to-do list literally and put it into your calendar system, you're going to figure out real quick what's important, what's really important, what's urgent, and what's really not so important whatsoever.
Right.
And you stop doing the things that are not so important.
You start letting go.
The things that are very important, especially when you start squinching that time block down because you have to fit everything in. So cleaning the house in an hour, now it's done in a half an hour, and it's still done pretty good. That could be part of your workout too, right? But you find ways to be more efficient in the things that have to be done and doing them in less time, so you actually have more time. And
or you just outsource.
Or you outsource. There you go.
You delegate, right?
That's right.
The art of delegation, it really is an art.
And for husbands out there, I mean, a happier wife is a happier life, I promise you. So she doesn't have to clean. I don't have to either. So that makes me happy as well. And so it may be worth the investment. So that's things that we just have to look at from a family standpoint. These things do build a happier family, happier kids, more secure kids. And these things are great things to teach all of our kids growing up as well. For those of you who work at home, if your kids know that you have time blocks and you create time blocks like, every hour, 15 minutes to go check on the kids, do something with them, have a snack with them, these types of things, there's ways to actually manage this even working from home with kids at home. Due to the pandemic and whatnot, that kids will follow and they'll be very, very successful, and you will also be much happier, and you'll have more time for yourself, the self-care you need to love on your spouse and then love on your kids. Do you have anything else you want to add before we close?
I think that's everything.
The importance of this is really the energy. It's paramount, and there's ways to create energy, and it's to be more focused and just be more efficient, and it's life-changing. So we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Parent Survival Kit, from surviving to thriving in your household.